What's up, party people? We are back yet again, and we got an interesting stack of books today. Some older stuff, and another short story from O'Connor, which was good. Not as good as the one last week, but still good. So, first up, we have a lesser-known novel from Melville, published in 1850, called White Jacket. It was based on real-life experiences that he had aboard the USS United States, which is a crazy name for a ship because USS, like the name that comes before most ships, means United States ship. So it's United States ship, United States. I just thought that was an odd name. Anyways, in the book he renames the USS United States to be the USS Neversink, which of course is another ironic name, Neversink for a ship. Anyways, it's filled with stories that he's overheard from other sailors, as well as a kind of a chronicle of the power structure aboard the ship, which is supposed to be symbolized in like a microcosm of the power structures that exist in society. So yeah, it's cool, and apparently it's also filled with like real life accurate depictions of how a ship works. So it's also informative in that sense as well. And I'm happy to report that we have good flop on this this World's Classics edition. So thank you, Oxford. Next up, we have something published in 1861, and that is not an original work, but a compilation. And the compilation was made by Francis Turner Palgrave, and that is the Golden Treasury. It's a selection of poetry. And of course, the names that are mentioned in here are ones that we are all familiar with. I'll try to think of a few, like Wordsworth, Shelley. Now I'm blanking, of course. Come on. Of course, as soon as I turn the camera on, I can't think. Anyways, there's a lot of like traditionally accepted classical poets. Not classical in the sense of ancient Greece, but maybe canonical is the right word. So looking forward to reading this one as well. Although I'm trying to collect poetry books that have like complete works of every individual author. So maybe there's be some duplicates in here. But anyways, it's a cool artifact of history. Starting now on our older stuff, we have here something called Chronicles by Froissart. Now, I understand that this is a record of the 100 Years' War that was fought between England and France, and I think it's 14th century. Now, it actually lasted not 100 years, as the name 100 Years' War would suggest, but actually a bit longer, 116 years. But the fighting was intermittent at different points. They would stop and then start again, and it was kind of messy. And things would prevent them from fighting each other, such as the bubonic plague. Okay, the Black Death, it was just killing people, so they couldn't kill each other, which is just a lot of death overall. So, yeah, Middle Ages, unfortunate time to live. Although they did build some pretty cool stuff, like art and cathedrals. But yeah, so that's cool. And I think this is from the French perspective of the 100 Years' War, because I think Froissart is a French name. Next up, we also have a book that contains two chronicles, also in Old French, and that is the Chronicles of the Crusades by Joinville and Villehardouin. Here's what it looks like here. Now, the chronicles were fought in the 12th and 13th century, and yeah, I think these ones kind of relate the latter part of the Crusades. And yeah, if you don't know what the Crusades are, you know, the European powers are trying to quest towards the Holy Land to take it back from the Arabs. That's about all I know. But yeah, seems cool. So looking forward to reading this. Also, it doesn't look like it's ever really been opened. Like the spine and the pages are in like perfect condition. Even though it's very speckled on the outside, it doesn't look like it's actually ever been opened. So that's interesting because when was this published? We got a cool stamp on the inside there in red. But when was this published? Does it say? 1963. Huh. Or no, 1969. Next up we have a really thin little skinny one. And that is Robert Henryson's The Testament of Cresseid, and other poems. Now, you might recognize that name, Cresseid, It's spelt differently, but it's in one of Geoffrey Chaucer's famous works, Troilus and Cresseid. Now, in Troilus and Cresseid, it's supposed to be a love story, right, between Troilus, the guy, Cresseid's the girl, and at the end, not to spoil it, but Cresseid is not faithful to Troilus. She basically just takes off for another city and takes on another suitor and marries him. Marries? I'm not sure. Maybe they just have relations. I'm not sure. Anyways, she's not faithful to Troilus, and so Henryson, 100 years later, in the 15th century, because Chaucer was 14th, he picks up the story and kind of moralizes on it. So he continues writing from Cresseid's perspective and kind of gives her a tragic end, because of course infidelity was definitely against the Christian morality that was very prevalent in society at that time. So I don't know, maybe if this was rewritten today, she would go on to be a boss babe or CEO or something. Not so sure, but Henryson, yeah. Another anecdote on Henryson, he was Scottish, and the word that they used in Scotland to describe bards is macars. Not sure why I included that, but I just thought it was a cool word, macars. Now this next one is one that I'm very excited to read, and that is Anthony Hope's The Prisoner of Zenda, and then plus the subsequent, what's the word, sequel, The Rupert of Hentzau. Here's what it looks like. It looks like it's a screenshot from a movie or something. Now, just reading the synopsis of this book, it sounds like the greatest setup for a novel of all time. It seems awesome. So basically, there's this kingdom where the previous king dies, and the next king has to succeed him and get the throne, the power. The problem is that he gets drugged the night before the coronation, and so in order for him to get power, he has to be coronated like that day, but he gets drugged the night before, so he's like incapacitated. So in order to save the kingdom from the ploys of these people who are trying to destabilize the throne, a stranger in the land who looks like the king is like put as a political decoy in his spot to like make sure that the transfer of power goes smoothly. So which I just think is like it just sounds like an awesome, heroic story of, yeah, anyways, it just sounds really good. So looking forward to reading that. And this was published 1894, I think. Yeah. Lastly, but not leastly, I finally secured a copy of Lord Byron's Don Juan. Now, Byron, he was 1788, he was born, I believe. When did he write Lord Byron? It took him 5 years, and 1824, I believe, and he died before he finished it. This poem, this long poem, has 17 cantos or sections, and I think the 17th, the final one, is unfinished, but I'm not confident about that. Anyways, Don Juan, oh, sorry, one more anecdote about Byron. He only had one kid in wedlock, and that kid, Ada Lovelace, ended up being one of the very, very first computer programmers. So how serendipitous is that? That's a very interesting connection there. But anyways, Don Juan, of course, this is not the first Don Juan story. Don Juan was a famous caricature in Spanish culture. I think the very first official story from 1630 was called The Trickster of Seville. And Don Juan, of course, is now an English term for like a womanizer, somebody who just kind of sleeps around and yeah, just generally not a great character. Don Juan supposedly boasts that he can bed a woman no matter how old she is, so maybe he's gone to bed with older ladies as well. That's kind of strange. But anyways, yeah. Depending on the Don Juan story or the version, sometimes he is dragged to hell in like so it's like moralizing, similar to Henryson. Sometimes he goes willingly to hell, and in some he actually begs for forgiveness and is acquitted. So I'm not sure in Byron's version which ending it has, but yeah, super interested to read this as well. That's all for the stack today. Of course, I also read a short story from Flannery O'Connor, and this one, I don't want to mess up the title here. It's called, oh, can't find it. You Can't Be Any Poorer Than Dead. And if the plot summary I'm going to give sounds familiar, it's because Flannery O'Connor used it in her 1960 novel as the very first chapter, The Violent Bear It Away, which is her second novel. So this short story was published 5 years earlier, so 1955, in some sort of newspaper or review or magazine or something. The idea behind it is that there's this really old dude who kidnaps his great-grandson or great-grandnephew and raises him on this like corn farm in the middle of nowhere. And it's not clear in the short story why he did that. It's made out to be that he's trying to save him from being raised, because the kid's an orphan. He's saving him from being raised by another relative who's kind of strange. She's a school teacher, but when the old man stayed with the school teacher, he was kind of like using him for a report that he was writing, like doing research on him while he was living in the same house. It's possible that the old guy was being unreliable in his account, but that's kind of the pretense under which he kidnaps his great grandnephew. Anyways, the kid's like 14 or 15, and the guy is dying, and he knows it, so he's like, I want a good Christian burial, like don't cremate me, because of course some Christians believe that if you're cremated, your body will not resurrect on the day of judgment, because there's no body left. Your ashes got scattered, right? There's no bones. So whether or not that assumption is correct or not, he asks for a proper Christian burial. So one day when he's eating breakfast, he just dies in his seat and just keeps sitting there, just like with rigor mortis, just like sits in his chair dead. So the kid is like, well, I guess I gotta go get a shovel. But he starts hearing this voice in his head that tells him different things. And so he goes to like start digging. He digs all day, only gets like 2 feet deep. And the old guy, when he was alive, was like, I don't want an 8 foot, because you know the saying is like, you gotta bury him 8 feet deep so the dogs don't dig him up and eat him. I don't want to be buried 8 feet deep. I want to be buried 10 feet deep so that no one gets to me. And so the kid's like, bro, I'm not gonna get 10 feet. Like, I'm only 2 feet. It's been all day. So then some people come from like a nearby farm or whatever to see him, ask if he's all right. And I think they're also actually asking for either vinegar or booze or something. They have got cups they're asking to get filled. So the guy runs, and the voice tells him not to bury his dad, but to go get drunk. So he finds a secret stash in the woods and just like gets drunk. And then the neighbors have been waiting all day for him to come back, and he's just literally passed out, intoxicated, in the forest somewhere. And they find him and they're like, oh, you're not acting good. Like, come on, like get it together. They leave, and then the novel closes, or the short story closes on the kid like sobering up, kind of. He's still like seeing things, and like it's dark out, and he doesn't really know exactly what's going on. He's like in some spot between being sober and being like half asleep, half drunk, and he sets fire to the farmhouse on the property in the middle of the cornfield with the dead body and still inside of it. So yeah, that's the whole thing. It's hard exactly to tease out what the Flannery O'Connor was getting at in the short story by itself, because of course if you read the novel Violent Buried Away, you get tons more context on this guy's story. Just based on the short story though, it seems like O'Connor is kind of getting at the fact that this young kid is sort of learning to move past the person that his caretaker had brought him up to be, because the voice in his head is starting to question the life and upbringing that he had, and the values and the traditions and the ways of life. So it seems like there's kind of like a split in his brain between the old self and the new self that arises as soon as his great uncle dies. So yeah, not too sure I can say anything more about that. But yeah, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, of course. More short stories, more books. I've got stacks on the floor here, although I am running low, so I have to go to the store. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you next week.